Coffee Talk is an indie visual novel from the developer Toge Productions. It's about a barista who runs a coffee shop that's only open at night and deals with a variety of customers with their own personal problems. But the way that this barista fixes it is by making them a unique drink. Yeah, if you're a J-drama fan like me, then this sounds suspiciously similar to Midnight Diner, which the team at Toge have cited as a big influence. The unique thing about Coffee Talk that sets it apart from the sea of other visual novels is that it takes place in an alternate universe version of Seattle with a sci-fi/fantasy setting. It's also extremely laid back in terms of tone and vibes, which is a welcome addition in this current climate. But all of this stuff never retracts from the focus of Coffee Talk, that being a 3 or so hour almost episodic drama that covers a wide array of characters and their problems. There's a catgirl pop star who has disagreements with her widowed father, a vampire who is very blunt but often correct, a mermaid who develops a friendship with an orc over their careers in game development, a werewolf who works at a hospital, that it's more interesting than it sounds, I promise, and an alien named Neil who wants to impregnate. A big concern of mine was that each different character would just be there to be dramatic, like they're there to just have an outburst and storm off, but everyone's pretty alright. Freya, who's kind of like the barista's best friend and is the character with the most screen time, can be pretty grating at points, but even then, she's not terrible. Sometimes she just gets on my fucking nerves, that's all. Neil is the most enjoyable character. Not a fan of the whole fish out of water trope, but he brings a nice air of relief when compared to the rest of the game and its themes. Like I said, the game is only like 3 to 4 hours long, which may immediately turn some players off, but when you take into account that there are no dialogue options or branching paths, you're really just watching a miniseries that can be controlled at your own pace. And that short run time is what makes this game so palatable for both newcomers and veterans of the visual novel genre. Besides, if you want more bang for your buck, then there's an endless mode as well as a secret ending that's pretty easy to get. Instead of just sequel baiting, it's actually a really well executed case of world building, one that makes sense with the whole story in retrospect. And it's one that I think you should take the time and achieve since it makes the entire story feel whole. The art style is pretty amazing. It's very simplistic, sometimes to its own detriment, but it's a unique use of pixel art. It almost looks like a PC Engine throwback, and I loved that. Some things like the road and the window have pretty wonky perspective, but I've always been bad at that, so who am I to say anything? My biggest problem with Coffee Talk is the social commentary and how it's sloppily handled. Oftentimes, philosophy or just deep social issues are just dropped into the player's lap, like it's an introduction class without much actually being said. Each day's worth of conversations are about 10 to 15 minutes. So bringing up problems like how overworked game developers are, racist in-laws, or how the American government handles immigration already shoots yourself in the foot. Wow, these topics are pretty heavy. Who the fuck do I look like, Abigail Thorne? Maybe Coffee Talk isn't trying to say anything. Maybe it's just trying to tell a story filled with modern day problems, but set in a fantasy world. And that is completely fine. It's just that there's many occasions where the game will just wink at the camera saying how a world with humans shouldn't have any of these race issues like our fantasy world filled with orcs, elves, and succubi does. Which is technically commentary? I think that recognizing and commenting on the world around you in the art you make is understandable. Hell, that's how some of the most memorable works of art have come into existence. Sometimes, even just acknowledging things that happen around you can give your art that unique sense of a human's touch. Beyond social commentary, there's constant remarks about the gaming industry as a whole, from franchises being milked by publishers, to movie adaptations, to gamers who play artsy-fartsy stuff being smarter in some way than those who play the big AAA stuff. Fucking yikes! As well as the aforementioned grueling culture of developers overworking themselves to meet publisher deadlines. The only problem is that all of this stuff, much like the heavier social commentary, is brought up and forgotten within minutes. I really don't want to sound like I'm the end-all be-all of how a game should handle its themes. Part of me gets it, because that's like a real conversation you'd overhear in a coffee shop. Topics get brought up for a second and are forgotten just as quickly by all the parties involved. But on the other hand, it gets so common to the point where it feels like the game is randomly preaching to the player for the sake of preaching. I don't know, I have complicated feelings about it. But much like Coffee Talk, I have nothing else to say, so I'm moving on. Like any other visual novel, on a second playthrough you can skip dialogue you've seen before. But Coffee Talk forces you to watch the full character animations even on a second playthrough, which really just ends up wasting a shit ton of your time, especially for when characters enter and leave the coffee shop, which is a lot. Not to mention these 3 separate loading screens you have to get through in between each day. As you can see, my issues with this game are either very minor or may vary from person to person. Overall, if you're looking for a short but sweet introduction into visual novels, then Coffee Talk is going to be your cup of tea. That sounded way funnier on paper. Especially if you've been stressed for a myriad of reasons and have been looking for that one thing that can calm you down, there's no reason to not buy Coffee Talk. Yeah, I have some issues with it casually throwing around a variety of very serious topics, and some characters aren't always great, but for only $12, it's a nice game to finish on a day off, especially if you have any interest in visual novels. Anyways, that's all I got for you guys. Like, subscribe, and all that jazz. I'll catch you guys next time. Later, kids. Have a good night.